Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kohli Show, and I'm your host, Avik Kohli. This is going to be the second episode of my podcast. And in this episode, I have with me Lewis Burns, who is a self described polymath, a Ph.D. in philosophy from the University of Texas at Dallas, and a 3 time distinguished Toastmaster. I have known Lewis for around 2 years now through my Toastmasters club. And personally, I have learned a lot of things from Lewis, including how to be a better Toastmaster, as well as how to be a better leader in Toastmasters. He has been a mentor and a good friend. In my conversations with Lewis, I've always learned a lot of new, different things. He is a lifelong learner, and in our podcast, we had a 2 hour long conversation about Toastmasters, about life in USA from the perspective of an immigrant student, about everyday lifestyle, a lot about nutrition and exercise. Hope you all enjoy our conversation. All right. Hello, Lewis. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Um, how was your move to Maine?
Well, I actually moved to Oregon.
Oregon?
Yeah, it's still Portland, but it's Portland, Oregon.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. How did that happen? I thought you were moving to Portland, Maine, and then you switched from one part of the country to another and ended up moving to Oregon, which is
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It was that I think Reka managed bookstores for like 15 years, and we'd always thought of starting a bookstore. So I started looking before we decided to move for sure. I found one was for sale in Portland, Oregon, and we ended up buying it. So
nice.
that's how we got here.
Nice. And for those of you who don't know who Rekha is Lewis's wife, and she's bought a bookstore in Portland, Oregon. Um, so are you in the city, or are you like a bit further away from the city?
The store itself is in Oregon City, which is a suburb about 10 minutes south of Portland. And we're just in Southeast Portland. So it's a pretty short commute.
Nice. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great location for a store. Portland's a growing city. Congrats on the move. I see that you still have to unpack a little bit going by the boxes behind you right now.
Yeah, these are my office books. So we've not unpacked but just one box. And when we get to that, we're trying to decide if we're just going to take them directly to the store or go through them first, but we'll see.
Okay, cool. So thank you for joining my podcast today. I really wanted to have you on this podcast because it was connected to a pathway assignment in Toastmasters, and we have known each other from Toastmasters. My first ever Toastmaster club was JSOM Friday Toastmasters, which you were a long time part of, and I did get to learn a lot from you. So, for the listeners who are new to the concept of Toastmasters, how would you describe what Toastmasters really is?
Yeah, to guests or people that I meet and don't know what it is, I usually say that it's a communication and leadership club. And then depending on how much information they want, can explain in 2 sentences, 2 paragraphs, 2 hours.
No, if you had to give like a 30-second introduction to what kind of public speaking platform it is.
Yeah, it's a structured platform where there's progressively more challenging projects to engage in, both on the communication and the leadership side. It's a volunteer organization, but we do have membership fees. So it's not just anyone that shows up, but people who have decided to put a little bit of skin in the game. So there's the other people there are there for mentoring to help you get started, understand what's going on. But then once you're around for a while, you start to take progressively more challenging leadership roles, club officer, district officer, and so forth, and mentor the new people as they show up too.
Great. And you happen to be a distinguished Toastmaster, which just by the name reflects is a good distinction to hold in the organization. Um, how long did it take you to become a distinguished Toastmaster?
When I first started, I wasn't nearly as committed as I've become since then. So my first one, I think, took me about 8 years. I think someone that's really dedicated and puts everything on the calendar can reasonably finish in 3 years now.
Nice. 8 years to get to your first distinguished Toastmaster. And how many distinguished Toastmasters do you have in all?
I have 3 now.
That's great. It's a great number. How long have you been a part of Toastmasters?
I first joined Toastmasters in 2000, so about 22 years now.
22 years. Wow. Oh, that's great. Let's start from a couple of more things about you. So, what do you do right now except Toastmasters?
Well, I split my time between doing all the back end for the bookstore, the bookkeeping, the documentation, employee issues, um, hardware issues. If there's something broken, I go fix it. Handle all the billing and accounts and all the back end stuff that we're slowly getting ramped up. We'll be putting in an inventory system, probably our next big project. I do that. I do day trading, trade the market, which my local time here in Oregon is at 5:30 in the morning when it opens, or 6:30 in the morning. Yeah. And then I have a nonprofit that I started that's related to local community and economic development. So we mostly do research. I do some blogging. Our next big project's gonna, well, after I write a couple more papers, is develop a game that helps people understand the issues related to affordable housing in the market.
Nice. That's a lot of initiatives. Do you find yourself pressed for time to, like dedicate to all of these things?
Yeah, definitely. There's always a longer list of to do things than things that get done. So it's a continual process of curating the most important things and setting the others aside for another time.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely can understand that. I do not have a lot of things like you do in, my pipeline, but I still do struggle to find time to go over all the things that I work on too. And I guess that's just the more you live, the more you learn on how to be more efficient with your time. Let's start off with the very beginning. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Dallas Fort Worth area. Let's see, around age, when I was really young, we moved to Euless. So I went to Grapevine, Colleyville school districts. I stayed there through my last year of high school, I guess. We moved to Keller, which is north of Fort Worth. And then I went to University of North Texas to finish my last couple of years of high school. After that, I moved to Austin to start undergrad, and I just stayed there for about 15 years. So I stayed there until I came back to Dallas for graduate school.
Cool.
And of course, I traveled in between. I was in the Army, so I was stationed overseas and deployed overseas.
How long were you in the army?
3 years altogether.
Did you like it?
A few aspects of it. I mean, I liked the travel. I liked having people to get up and work out with in the mornings. I found that I'm a fairly structured person, so the schedule mostly worked for me. when it was, not in deployment schedule. That's 12 hours on, 12 hours off. That's a bit much.
What did you not like about working in the army?
Well, I ended up getting out because I disagreed with our invading other countries, which now that we've seen the aftermath of Afghanistan, that makes sense to everybody. But at the time, it was pretty controversial and unpopular.
And when you say at the time, what year is it?
That was 2005 when I got out.
Oh, so it was just 3 years after 9/11, I guess.
Yeah, I got in because of 9/11,
Hmm.
which I found out once I got in. That's very rare. Most people are there for the job benefits, which are pretty good. Educational benefits, health benefits.
Yeah. So it's very lucrative to be in the army because of the benefits for sure. And also, I think there's a certain kind of respect that comes with, someone who works in the army. Do you agree with that? Like, do people in the civilian world respect army professionals for what they do?
It it's an interesting question because it depends on what country you're in for sure. There's a lot of, being married to an Indian, I've come to understand the way the army is viewed in India is much different than it is in the U.S. And obviously, that's going to be different in a country that has mandatory military service like South Korea or Israel or Iran. And I've met people from all those places that have done their military service too, and it's definitely a different thing to be a veteran in the U.S. than any of those other places. I think it depends on several things. Maybe what you did in the military, how long you were in the military. I think going into academia from the military, I got a lot of mixed reactions. The social sciences and the harder sciences are kind of cool with it. The humanities are generally afraid of you. Business schools like it. I mean, it's kind of all over the place.
Hmm. Yeah, you're right. In India, if you are a part of the defense services, you're generally treated with respect. They thank you for your service and they appreciate your service because it does involve a lot of sacrifice. Because like America is almost always at war, India is kind of almost always at war too. Um, and yeah, so it's good to know that there's differences around the world. I did not know that. I just thought that there's just one way how people look at the people in defense services. So after you left the army in 2005, uh, what was your next move in life?
Well, it's funny because I left with PTSD and it
Hmm.
was pretty severe at the beginning. I wasn't able to function very well. And I started teaching. I'd been a substitute teacher before and I'd enjoyed it. So I started teaching, but between the stress from the kids, and I was teaching middle school math. So that's probably one of the hardest subjects to try to teach just because, well, the middle school that I was at, it was, I don't know what the the right way to say it anymore is, but we would have said lower economic, socioeconomic status school, poor kid school, I guess maybe. But it also had magnet kids, so it was kind of a mix. And I had students that were counting on their fingers to do basic addition. I had kids that told me they didn't have to study because their parents told them they could drop out of school the next year. Um, I had kids that I could not provide enough work for because they were so enthusiastic about learning, and it was just all over the place. And so that coupled with the administration was trying to teach what they called new math, which is completely watered down, in my opinion, and more about making the kids feel good about themselves than actually being able to do any math. So between the stresses of trying to reconcile all those things, and my PTSD, I had to quit and walk away from it. I mostly just did self-employment or really a lot of entry-level jobs for a long time, including clinical trials. That was maybe half my income was just from volunteering for clinical trials. So I was kind of in that state for about 5 or 6 years before I realized, one, that I had military benefits, two, that I realized that I had PTSD. I just thought that was my new normal. And then through a couple of things like building a tiny house, went and did that because I thought I was tired of paying rent. And then I got married and got some help with the PTSD and found out I had educational benefits. So is really the veteran benefits that let me come back to graduate school. So I started grad school again back in 2011 at UT Arlington. Started a Toastmasters club there. I wanted to study architecture, but I know that I say I'm a structured person, but if the structure doesn't fit, then I can't fit in it. And the architecture school, they were kind of actively rejecting sustainability as a topic to study. They just wanted to study modernism, which I'm not a big fan of that. And it kind of, I feel like I've done a lot of things backwards in life. So most people, they go to the military before they go to college. And I went to college and then I went to the military and then I went back to college. And so everything was kind of out of order, and you just kind of have to make your own place when you don't fit the normal mold. So I was, and I'd previously been a real estate agent before I joined the Army too. I didn't feel socially adept anymore after the PTSD enough to go back into that field the way I had before. So I ended up having, because of also the PTSD, I had to drop out of the architecture school. I just couldn't get along with the instructor, who I already had more building experience and design experience than him, having worked on a tiny house, and him just going around breaking all of our models as some kind of diva or something. It didn't work for me. So I got out of that and finished up a real estate master's degree in 1 year. So then I had some more benefits. So I came to UT Dallas, where I met you guys, and thought that I wanted to work on developing simulators, but while it was advertised, that wasn't really something that they had coursework in. So just kind of, again, had to make my own degree plan, and I double majored in 2 different fields, which neither field liked that. But I guess I just made out of it what I could.
So all this while, when you were going through these experiences, like undiagnosed PTSD, and then finally you diagnosed it, and you were like, okay, so this is interfering with my work. Whenever you had to make next move career-wise or in your life, what was your guiding principle? Like, what were you basing those career moves on, from teaching to, uh, volunteering or clinical trials to studying again? Was there something that you were trying to, some direction you were trying to go in, or were you like, okay, I'm just going to experiment and see what I find the best fit for me?
Yeah, I think I'm an avid learner. So if I could do something that I was learning, I think one time when I was blogging, I went back and so I was doing some online marketing and copywriting because I could do that just mostly by myself from home. And I went back and counted all the part-time or full-time jobs I'd ever had. And I think I totaled it up to over 40 different jobs. So I think I mostly go for things that are interesting and meaningful. And if there's something I can learn along the way, that's really important. Obviously, there's been times when I had to take a job just to pay the bills, and that's fine for a time. But yeah, I'm usually looking for something interesting.
Nice. Yeah, even when you take those jobs just to pay the bills, I guess you do learn a couple of things from it, either, more about the area that you work in, or just maybe I like this kind of job, or I do not want to work in this industry ever again.
Yeah.
So working in 40 different kinds of jobs, was there anything that you ever felt really passionate about when you were working in that industry?
Uh, yeah, I really love teaching. Um, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it because I feel like the Reika was a Montessori school teacher for a time too. So I've read and thought and tried a lot of different things in terms of creating a significant learning experience and what you can do in public or private school environments. I think we're really shortchanging ourselves with the educational systems at pretty much all levels. Um, there's so much room for improvement there. I love teaching, but I don't think I would go back to it. So I've done teaching at the, like when I substitute taught, I taught every level. And I found that like second graders were the easiest because they were just old enough to understand how school worked, but not quite jaded yet.
Mm,
By third and fourth grade, that's like what, 8 and 9 year olds, they're already starting to get jaded. So
yeah.
it's really hard. And then college, I think there's a lot of room for improvement there. I mean, I think everyone agrees that education is a good thing for the most part, but it just seems like we've built these um, sclerotic educational institutions that are having difficulty delivering on their promises.
Hmm. So, if you had to specialize in one thing that you have to teach, what would that be?
Hmm. Let's see. So things that okay, so to complete that list of things, even in high school, I was teaching other students, like either through tutoring or being selected out as a student who got the right answer and to explain it to people. I in college, I was teaching some other. I didn't get a TA position because they wanted me to teach a subject I had no knowledge of, and so I said I couldn't do that. So they just didn't give me another position. Um, I well, okay, so that was at the second graduate program. The first one, I was like kind of the in-class tutor. So I was tutoring students in construction structures, so like an engineering type course. And then most recently, I was like an assistant instructor and then a part-time instructor for data science in a fintech course. That's postgraduate at the university level. And that was interesting because coming from a traditional college education point of view, you think the coding boot camps, maybe they're onto something. And because they're more efficient, more effective, you get actual marketable skills when you come out. And but after having spent about 18 months doing that, I realized it has its limitations as well. So obviously, I've been through military training, corporate training, and then I guess, well, I've taught self defense. I've taken lots of self defense. Um, I've seen a bunch of people try to teach language hacking. So if you want to learn foreign languages, there's accelerated ways to do that. I've done a lot of memory training. So all the different ways you can learn to memorize different things. And then I do modeling still to this day, which is figuring out how to extract the structure of experience and learn a new skill based on someone else's performance of it. So I think I love teaching. I love learning. So teaching is kind of the proxy for that. But I haven't really found an environment that feels like it fits yet for that.
Gotcha. Yeah, it looks like you love learning, and that's why you like to go around and learn as much as you can. And when you're sure that you know it enough, then you start going out to maybe teach other people. Because I've been teaching a little bit recently myself, and what I've seen is that when I work with my students, um, I get a better hold of the concepts that might not have been as clear before. based on their questions and troubleshooting their problems. Uh, to, like you said,
Yeah.
it's a proxy for learning in itself. And this whole time you were a part of Toastmasters, the whole since 2000 to like 2022, when you were
Yeah.
doing all of these things.
I obviously had to take a break when I deployed overseas, but
Yeah, of course.
before and after that, yeah.
Cool. Why did you stay around with Toastmasters for like 22 years? What was it that like made you keep coming back?
You know, it just in the conversation we've had, it made me realize that Toastmasters is another opportunity for teaching and learning. And it's not a perfect structure, but it's got enough flexibility that I feel like I can make some difference there without it taking too much from me. So I think joined initially because I read a lot, and at the time, I think I'd read 2 or 3 books that all said you should join Toastmasters. So I thought, okay, let me try this thing out. So I went and joined, and then it changed my life, and I made friends that I still have to this day. And a lot of people come for the improvement, but then stay for the people. So I've kind of found that it's a place that I can continue to learn and mentor. Even if I'm the most experienced one in the club, I can still learn.
Yeah. Uh, you said it changed your life. Well, how did it change your life?
Um, it's probably no surprise to say that I was shy and nerdy and all those things growing up. And I knew that the people that make the biggest difference are the ones that can lead other people. So if at the end of the day, I want my life to have meant something, then it's a skill that I need. And I can say without hesitation that it's probably the most important skill available for a person. Your thinking skills are great, but if you can't communicate your thoughts to other people, then it doesn't have much effect. So I've seen a transformation over time in terms of being able to communicate my thoughts, connect with other people, lead other people, organize other people.
Cool. And just for the listeners to know and the viewers, I have personally learned a lot from you over the 2 years that we worked together at JSON Friday Toastmasters. So yeah, thanks for your time with the club. I really appreciate whatever I've learned from you, and and even after you've left the club, I think everything that I learned from you, I've been able to implement it to keep the club going as much as I can, and hopefully it keeps going further into the future. Um,
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
learned that next month we will celebrate 12-year anniversary for Jason Friday Toastmasters, which is yeah, which is a long amount of time, you know. How long were you a part of Jason Friday Toastmasters?
Well, I think I've paid my dues to the end of the month, so in some sense I still am. But I joined when I first came from. Yeah, I started grad school, I guess, in 2012, so about 10 years.
Yeah, and the club was established 2 years before you joined. Um, so yeah, why you stayed there for 10 years? What kept you there? Because for people who don't know, Jason Friday Toastmasters is a part of the business school of University of Texas at Dallas, which is the school that you both of us went to. So essentially, it's more of a grad school Toastmasters club. And my question stems from the point of view that till that point you were experienced, and if you would have ventured out, you of Jason Friday Toastmasters, there could have been other clubs where you could have worked with more experienced Toastmasters than the people who come to Jason Friday. And then there's a churn there that I've observed in my time there, that people come, they get a job, they can't find for the club, they end up leaving. So yeah, what is it about that club that It was like, you know what, I like being here because what value were you getting from it?
Yeah. Um, Before I came to Jason Friday, I helped start the University of Texas at Arlington Toastmasters Club. They didn't have a club before I got there. But they had people that were interested in starting one. So we somehow found each other. I don't know how now, but I wanted to continue to be part of a club that was at the university I was attending. And when we moved over to Richardson, we bought a house, so it was convenient. I wanted to be able to walk to classes, and I think over time, it was like I was saying before, as long as there's room for me to keep learning something and growing and improving. When we first started, there was only the faculty advisor was the only one that had any Toastmasters experience, and she was trying to hold it together all on her own. And so when I came in and offered to help out, she was really happy to hear that. And we got the club up and running. So it was able to run without her having to pull it along herself. And comparing a university club to a community club, which was the one I was in before, yes, there's a lot of churn. There's a much higher turnover rate than most clubs, to the degree that we would have district officers calling us being like, why are so many people quitting? And I'm like, well, we're a university, they graduate. It wasn't always graduate. When I first got there, it was mostly undergraduates. And then we started picking up a few graduates. And I think at one point we had both undergraduates and 5 PhD students. So we had the whole spectrum. But demographics has changed over time. I think the political environment has had some effect on that. There was a time, sometime in the middle of my tenure, where we had several graduate students from Iran, and then through whatever series of events that slowly tapered off, and then there were none. So,
So how did the demographics change over the course of the 10 years that you were at Jason Friday?
yeah, I think, well, it's interesting. I think we've kind of started to swing back to where it was before, because there, for a while, it was a pretty even mix, like maybe 1/3 of American, Asian, and Indian. And there's a lot of cultural connections and crossovers, and everyone learning about different cultures. It was really enjoyable. And then obviously with the pandemic, international students had a hard time coming anymore. And I think with some of the political rhetoric directed at China, a lot of those students just stopped coming altogether. And yeah, I even had a Chinese friend that asked if we would still be friends with her, and it was like, of course, like nothing changed for us. So I think with all the media sources she was consuming, she felt like Americans wouldn't like a Chinese student anymore. So try to explain that people are not their government, even though the government's supposed to be made up of the people, supposedly in some places. The opinion of the government's rarely the same opinion of the individuals.
Mm-hmm. And you're right. I think a lot of foreign students definitely a part of the club even right now, which makes I think the majority of the uh, of our people there, which is foreign students. It's understandable because public speaking, especially in foreign language, for someone who's coming from a different country where it's not the primary mode of communication. For example, me, um, I think it's a great exposure to start your life in America so that you can communicate with people and get by, uh, in the life around here. So,
Yeah, and to your other point, you were asking why I didn't get involved with other clubs.
mhm,
When I was with my first club, that was in Austin, and I um, I think when I finished my second like award level, someone noticed and asked if I was interested in district leadership, So I was pretty young at that point. Obviously, I was in my 20s, and no one had said anything about leadership to me at any times. And I didn't know that was something that was open to me even. And so I got involved with club leadership and then district leadership. And I kind of burned myself out being a let's see, we call them division directors now. And actually a conference chair at the same time and a club officer at the same time. So I was burning the candle at all ends, and just decided to take a break after that. And then it was about the time that I started graduate school. So I just going to just different district events. I found the district in the Dallas area to be pretty different than the district in the Austin area. And it felt a little more bureaucratic to me. And, at that point, it's kind of like I have like infinite patience for people at the club level because they're just learning and getting started. But my standards are quite a bit higher for district level. And I feel like at the district level, you shouldn't be wasting people's time. So I've pushed back against that wherever I found that at the district level, and just found that I enjoy the club level more than dealing with district stuff. I still did I was the realignment on the realignment committee and then the realignment chair the last couple of years. And I think that just suited my skill set fairly well. And I didn't get too much pushback. You'd think it could be something really political, but there's no political party involved. So we're just trying to do the best thing for the district, balance the clubs as best we can. And then when someone says my area is not balanced, you just explain to them why it actually is, because everyone else has the same situation.
So, what kind of bureaucracy did you experience at the district level?
Oh, there's a lot of jumping the chain of command where, sometimes at the division or even higher level, some of those folks will either call or email our club members directly. And that's kind of what the area director is there for, if they need something. And sometimes it would be for stuff like, how come you're losing so many members? And it's just like, okay, the district is supposed to be there to support the clubs, not vice versa. So when the district starts to require too much of the club to the degree that I feel like it's impeding the club's health, then I just let them know that's not the mission of the district. And please communicate through the president. Don't email our members directly, because the members aren't going to know how to respond to your question. And I know what you're asking. I can tell you.
Interesting. But I think that should not be surprising to anyone based upon the nature of the club. Like every university club would have its own same amount of churn, I would imagine, not just Chase on Friday Toastmasters. But yeah, what I've heard from people around about the club is that you were the backbone of Chase on Friday Toastmasters and essentially carried the club through everything. Of course, you spent 10 years of your life there and made the club sustain the whole time, because I think no other club in the university has existed for as long as we have, if I'm right about it. I checked the list. There were just three other clubs who have had more of a lifespan than our club, and all of them were not university level clubs. So that's a big achievement to have such a long run at a club and make a club sustain for so long. And people are really worried after you've left that maybe the club is gonna die down soon. So, uh,
Well, it's not a heavy burden if you rely on the Toastmasters program and point people in the right direction. And once people figure out what they're doing there, then the roles are pretty well divided up, and it can operate like a well-oiled machine. You just tweak it now and then.
right. But there needs to be, even for a well-oiled machine to run, there needs to be a transition, and uh, from one leadership to another. You having been there the whole time, you acted like a mentor to the club, guiding the leadership at all times. but who's to be sure that that's going to happen in the future, right? So, uh, yeah, I think that was the way in which you supported the club, just by being a mentor to everyone, including me. So, yeah, thank you for that, and we really hope that club keeps on going for another 12 more years. Uh, so,
Yeah.
over the course of your time with the club, I know that you've worked with a lot of people who are uh, foreign students like me. Um, and uh, in this podcast, I want to give some value to people who are not a part of the Toastmasters Club, but who do move from abroad to United States. Um, there is a lot of cultural difference between things, how they happen here as compared to other countries. So for someone who is moving to America, and you being someone who's worked with a lot of people who are fresh off boat, as we say, in America, what are your recommendations for those people from abroad in being successful in their professional life in America?
Yeah. Well, part of this would be based on my personal values, right? And to me, it's important to me to live an interesting life. That may not make you professionally successful, though, because a lot of people get on a certain trajectory and there's only one really way to do that. So you go through, you do the grad school, you get the internship, you go to the job, you get married, you have the kid, you buy the big house. And that's the trajectory most people in grad school are on. And I've seen so many students take an internship just because that's the only one they could figure out. And then hear about what they actually do, and it's not interesting. It's repetitive, it's dull, it's just a filler for their resume. It's not making them a better person, it's not making the world a better place. And, I even tried to argue one student out of doing data entry. That was going to be her internship, but I wasn't successful at that. So, and when I hear how hard people work to get internships, I heard of one guy who wrote 700 applications or something like that. And it's just like, when I went to do an internship, I just walked into a place and asked if they needed help. And they're like, yeah, sure. That was the full extent of it. I've not had success applying for jobs before, unless they were just entry level. And I think most people realize the best jobs that you get, you don't apply for. They're ones that you find out through the grapevine or something like that. So my advice would be to get to know as many local people as possible. I think I see too many foreign students. They find their clique of folks that speak their native language and they don't leave it. And the only foreigners of any kind, Americans or otherwise, they know are from work. And even then, it's only a work relationship. It's you're not really friends beyond that. And so, say, do things people do here to make friends. I think Toastmasters is great for that because you're automatically, well, to some degree, you're getting to know people who are different than you. I'm glad to see that that's come back since the pandemic. So that's one place to start. But I think if you just do what local people do, whether that's join other clubs, volunteer, look for mentors, join a sports team. I don't know if that's even an option for a lot of students. Hadn't realized. I was stationed in Italy, and sometimes I would travel around on the weekends just by myself. And when I was by myself, people would just start talking to me, usually in Italian. So that wasn't great because my Italian wasn't very good. But I was just sitting in a train station one time reading a book, and a guy noticed I was reading in English, and he just sat down and started talking to me. He wanted to practice his English, and I was invited to come play soccer with their team, just a local city team, and I wasn't able to, one because of security concerns, but also because we were about to deploy. But just go out and meet people that are not like you. I mean, I think most people somewhere in the back of their mind, that's the reason that's one of the most important reasons for going overseas, is to meet different people. So if you go overseas and you only hang out with your own people, that's an experience that some people like, and I guess that's what most people do. But that's not. I'd do something else if it were me.
Right. There are a couple of things you mentioned in there. Let's start with number one. People tend to stick around with their clique. I think it's more because you spent like so many years in a country, and just being exposed to a different country, they're just taking steps into new territory. So uh, just fear of unfamiliar people, unfamiliar territory, fear of being judged uh, for not being from around there. I'm not saying I have that, but a lot of people do. My aim in the university was always, hey man, listen, I'm in a new country. I'm gonna experience whatever new this country has to offer. And just go around, do everything. What ends up happening is that people, they come here, they have a huge financial burden of wanting to get a job, paying back the loans. If you don't get a job in 90 days, you have to leave the country. So that is the reason they end up taking a lot of jobs that they don't like or they don't want to do, because at that point, having an interesting life is being debt free and not having a burden of a loan on you. Uh, Also, it's too early to know what you want to do in life, anyways. A lot of people are changing their professions after they're doing their master's degree. So, they just hear, hey, data analytics or computer science is good money. They're like, yes, I want to make good money. Let me just go out and get any job that pays me good money. And what do I have to do? We'll figure it out on the job. That's what it is. Uh, it's not fulfilling because I've been through the whole trajectory. Then there comes a point where you're like, yeah, I'm making the money now. I don't have that burden financially on me, but I'm not fulfilled. I'm bored. I'm bored. I'm not being able to, do well at my job. Also, a lot of people, to get a job, you need to have prior work experience. So just to get the work experience, they get whatever job that they can get. And once you build up on that work experience, then you have your choices of what kind of work I want to do now. So that fulfillment does come, but later down the line, not immediately. It's just, sticking with it till you get to the promised land. Uh, and another thing is, I was asked by someone as to how to go out and network with people, which was a great question. He was like, everyone tells me to get a job, you got to go out and network. And like you said, right, the best jobs are with the people who are already working there. And it's hard to say to anyone, go to networking events because people don't even have cars. So, they have to like take an Uber. It's not even worth it because you won't even meet people like that. And I think to get your network running, you have to at least know those people for like 2, 3 years before you can call in for favors like that. Because no one's gonna help you out with a job if you just met them once. Not a lot of times. Uh, so what I did tell them was maybe go and play a sport, like you said, join a sports club. Go and play a sport wherever you find whatever sport you want to play. And I think um, that is a good opportunity to make friends because I think sports games, especially team games, it's quicker to build friendships in that kind of environment. Yeah, and yeah, cool.
Yeah, let me expand on that a little bit. I I think most people go into networking situations um, the less than optimal attitude, thinking this is if enough people just know what my name is, that maybe someone will give me a job. So it's with your hand out and asking other people to do you a favor. I think the part that people miss is being interesting. So if you're doing your own projects, you've got your own hobbies, you're being an interesting person, that's the kind of person other people want to work with, have around at the office, spend a lot of time with. And I don't see a lot of people do that. That was always our advice in the coding boot camps is you need your own projects to talk about because experience, I think experience can be overrated to a degree. If you go in and they want to have 2 years of coding experience, well, you either have that or you don't. But if you can show that I've worked on some really important projects, then the experience speaks for itself. Because that's the point of experience, right? Is that you can actually do something. So if you can kind of skip the question about the number of years of experience and go straight to the point, which is you can do something valuable for that company or that person, then it's not finding a job because, the buddy system where someone's your friend and they're going to do you a favor. It's you find a job because they hear about something awesome you've done and they want to bring you on board.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Think having some kind of project going for yourself is a great way to get into the industries because you have demonstrable work. But sometimes it's just harder than, just going out, filling applications and getting a job. The best approach would be to do that yourself personally and um, just be interested in what you want to do in your career, I guess. Just get knee deep into it and keep working towards getting better in that skill. Um, but touching on the work experience part, I disagree a little bit with you on how much the work experience matters. Because having worked in India and having worked here personally, I think there's a big gap between the kind of work environments that you have in India versus the ones that you have here. And having that American work experience, even if it may not teach you a lot about the skills that you want to learn, the technical skills that you want to learn, I think the professional skills are more important than the technical skills. Would you agree?
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said. I definitely know that the work environment is different between the countries. Um, like I've had the experience you're talking about where you have to get a job or you have to leave. That happened in New Zealand. We tried to move there, thinking that there were more jobs based on what the government and recruiters were saying, and then getting there and finding out there's not nearly as many jobs as we were told. And then them, they're a lot of the Commonwealth countries are more bureaucratic than the U.S., where I guess the motto here is supposed to move fast and break things. Although it looks like in doing that, we've broken society just a little bit. But I think there's definitely more um, flexibility in thinking and entrepreneurial ideas about the fact that if you're a creative and strong enough learner, that whatever the job skill is today, it's going to be different tomorrow. And so it's more important to be coachable and to be able to pick up new skills than it is to have a specific set of skills that were important yesterday.
Absolutely. And I would say that the entrepreneurial skills and ownership aspect of your work, it's not only good to have, but it's necessary in the American work environment. Because if you don't have that, you're not gonna grow uh, as much or at all. So whereas in India, it's more about, can this guy do what he's told to do? If yes, he's gonna be successful. But in America, no one's going to tell you what you have to do. You have to figure it out yourself. Uh, you have to be in that position and you have to be like, what is the next best step that needs to be taken at this point, and then take that next best step.
And there's variation too. Some you get no direction, some you get a lot of direction.
Uh, yes, But I guess if you're getting a lot of directions from your boss, that means you've not matured in that position as much as you should have. I mean, in the initial few days, you will get a lot of directions, but I guess after like 6, 8, 9 months, you're expected to know your position better than your bosses, and I guess just solve problems as well as not just solve problems, but solve the problems that your boss isn't even aware of, uh, or can't even see because you're the one closely working with that position. So, if you like so close in that position and with that job, then the problems that you see, your boss can't even see them because she or he is doing their own thing, and they are aware of their problems, but they definitely won't be aware of your problems. That's where I think that entrepreneurial attitude comes in, where you're not just doing what you're told, but you're also going above and beyond to just take complete ownership of your position. I haven't worked in a senior leadership position in India, but I would assume that it'd be the same worldwide. If you get to a senior leadership position, that would be expected from you, regardless of where you work and what company you work. Also, in my work experience, it is kind of necessary that you do love your job. Otherwise, you won't be fulfilled. Um, do you agree with that?
I think love is an interesting topic. I think if you want to be the best in the world at something, then yes, you have to be passionate about it. But I think for the other 99.9% of us, it's sufficient to take your passion with you. If you're not passionate about that thing, then figure out what it is about that job that you can enjoy and learn from, or find a way to get into the zone.
Hmm. Uh,
I mean, it's like I think it's similar to me in thinking of like personal relationships too. I mean, do you have to go around telling everybody that you're friends with that you love them? No, but we can still be friends. I mean, a job is kind of like a friend that doesn't treat you very well, depending on the job.
well,
I actually I used that analogy in an interview one time because the interviewer said, um, if you get the job here, will you stay here for 5 years? And I was like, well, you're asking for marriage on the first date. We'll have to see how this goes. And he just kind of smiled, and they gave me the job offer, but I don't remember if I took it or not.
mhm. Yeah. He's doing the right thing from his end. He was trying to make sure that you join the company and do not end up deciding leaving it in like 1 year or 2 years. Which I've had that question put on to me in the terms of where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? If I say another company, you're probably not gonna get the job. But if I say, growing with this company, they'd be like, yeah, all that training that we've put into this guy, maybe it's gonna be worth it since he's gonna like
Well,
give us back.
yeah, it's funny. I've sat on a few like interview committees with the academy I went to for high school for new students, and there wasn't. I think maybe the administration was looking for some standard answers like, "Yes, I plan to be here in 5 years," but I was more interested in hearing something interesting. Again, that's kind of my preference, and the students that showed curiosity and a depth of thinking always stood out and got my highest recommendations.
Nice. But I would argue that if you're doing the same thing 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, how long do you think can it be interesting before it's not?
Yeah.
So, is there any job out there which can be interesting year after year, the same way it was the first day you joined? I mean, that's what the employers would expect the employees to feel like. But
Yeah, I'd say most professions are interesting like that, whether it's a doctor, lawyer, a therapist, a plumber, electrician, builder. I think just about any profession can That's one of the tenets of mastery, right? Is that there's always a room, like you've got enough autonomy to go out and learn how to get better at something. So if there's always something better to improve on, like obviously if you're just digging ditches, there's only so much you can improve that job.
Yeah, mastering yourself through your job, I think that process could be interesting. Um, could choose a lot of it could be, I don't want to say could be, is being good at going through the motions, being desensitized to going through those motions over and over again, because you're in the same situations every day, uh, trying to solve similar problems. Uh, in my experience, anything that does not involve me solving any problem using coding uh, can be making a spreadsheet or updating my Jira ticket or updating the documentation, which are as important part of the job as the coding part is. Uh, it's not interesting, but it still needs to be done. You can't get away from it. So I I feel that if 40% of my job is interesting and something that is challenging me, the 60% is everything that comes with it, it is interesting enough for me. If it gets to 30-70, then I find myself frustrated. Like, yeah, I can't do this. It is not challenging me enough. But my argument would be that it'd be hard to find any job where you find 100% of everything to be interesting. Taking the example of a doctor, he might like going to the patients, looking at their symptoms and finding solutions to their problems. But then there's also the whole documentation part where he'll have to sit down, fill those documents in, or tell his secretary to fill documents in, probably do some kind of inventory or other stuff. The uh, you know, clerical stuff that comes with being a part of the doctor. Uh, he wouldn't love that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, there's no job that you would even want to be 100% excitement. You need some downtime. You need some time to reflect. I think that's one of the challenges with corporate work is that the strength of the corporation is the efforts of many people multiplied over space and time. That's also one of the downsides of it is that within that organization, the job is scoped. And so you're kind of pigeonholed into a limited set of roles. The challenge is trying to, I think they annually or so, the Gallup polls come out and say that only 20% of employees are engaged at work, and that's a lot of that's just the nature of a corporate structure.
It really is. You're gonna be pigeonholed if you like it or not. I just guess, do you enjoy that pigeonhole that you found yourself in? Or do you find it challenging or engaging enough? I guess that is important in in being successful at that one. Because if you don't find engaging, I would argue that you'd find great success in that role. Um,
Well, and then a
cool.
lot of people are keeping themselves engaged by looking for other jobs.
Yeah, yeah, job hopping. But even if you're looking for that other job, I think it would be important that you identify the aspect of the current job that you did not like and try to identify some part of it that you did like and find more of it in the future, um, to avoid changing that job for another job later on.
Yeah.
Um, cool. But a lot of professional success that we just went over um, is also interlinked with having a good personal life going. And I, having known you for almost around 2 years, I've seen that you do have like a lot of, like you said initially, you have a structured life. Right? Would you want to go in detail right now, or what do you mean having a structured life? Are
Sure.
you're a structured person? What do you exactly mean by that?
Yeah, that like a lot of people that kind of try to optimize their productivity, I have a morning routine that starts with going to bed on time. So the bedtime routine is try to make sure I eat 3 hours before bed, 2 hours before bed, no more media besides reading devices. Last hour before bed, just try to read some fiction if I can, or spend time with friends and family. And then get up at the same time, go to bed at the same time every day of the week. Obviously, Reika likes to sleep in on the weekends, but as long as we go to bed at the same time, I'm fine with that. Um, and then I get up in the morning, I have breakfast, I get ready for trading. I trade for maybe 30 minutes, journal for another 30 minutes, get started on the rest of my to do list. I'll usually work out right before lunch, um, have my lunch, meditate after lunch while I'm digesting, rest and digest, and then start my second wave of work in the afternoon. Usually work till Ricky gets home, 4 or 5 o'clock. Um, we'll have dinner, we'll watch a show, talk about the store. That's been an adjustment. Is living with the person you're working with, and not just in separate rooms, but we're working on the same thing. So try not to let the issues of the store take over the rest of our life. And I think we figured out we got to stop talking about the store at least 2 hours before bedtime, or else the mind doesn't quite shut down well enough to sleep well. That's yeah, work out 6 days a week and take a day off.
Oh, I do agree with that part about not working 2 hours before the bedtime. When you were in the pandemic, I was working for this corporation, and they were at its peak during the whole lockdown. So work was a lot, and not just that, I was working from home. So there was no gap between my personal life and my professional life. And would essentially work till I could, and then eat, maybe watch a little bit of TV and go to sleep. Or maybe if the work's a lot that day, work till before I go to sleep. Uh, wasn't the best time of my life working, or even in my personal life, because there needs to be that separation between your work life and your personal life. Uh, because your professional life is not all of your life, and it should not be all of your life. I feel that some people would disagree. Some people who are like really passionate about their work be like, yeah, or business owners tend to do that a lot. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, as you are
yeah,
one right now.
yeah. Well, that was my experience in real estate too. There was never a time that you were really off. So, not that you're going and just talking about real estate with everybody you see, but it's kind of like that's always there, and you're not punching a clock. So, if you want to eat, you got to sell something.
Yep. But that takes away a little bit from your overall general productivity. I've observed, at least it did for me. If I have 8 hours of dedicated time, I think I'd be as productive as 12 hours of intermittent work time with my personal life things in the middle. And taking a break from things often helps in coming back to it, and doing them better. I've seen that especially when I'm coding. It's essentially trying to solve a puzzle. And sometimes you don't get to the end of the puzzle right away, but if you let it marinate a little bit, sleep over it, the next day you come back, you'd be surprised as to, how your subconscious mind was trying to solve it at the back, and you end up solving that stuff anyways. Uh,
Yeah, I think I've seen research saying that the like an ideal sustained work capacity of a person is 4 hours per day, and not 4 hours straight, but like 4 hours total.
Mm-hmm.
I've done it before. I don't do it now, but the concept of the Pomodoro, where you work for, and I've heard originally, I think it was like 25 and 5, but I think 53 minutes and 15 minutes off or something like that is supposed to be better. So generally, if you'll work for an hour and then get up and take a break, and then work for another hour, take a break. If you can get 4 good hours in, I think that's more than 80% of the population's getting in, even if they're at work for 10 or 12 hours.
Yep. I've heard a lot of people talk about the Pomodoro technique, especially some of them have been like really successful in their careers. So um, it's definitely not for nothing.
Mhm.
So the morning routine, uh, have you always had like a very structured sleeping time, waking up time? Uh, yeah.
I haven't, but I've noticed I do a lot better during the times that I do. Yeah, so now I'm up at 5 a.m. every day, and that I feel great. Like I hadn't done that in a while, and especially in grad school, because there's so many events that run late, and so many friends that want to stay over and play games, and really easy to get off the schedule and then not really, take the whole weekend trying to catch back up, and it's a hard cycle to break.
It
So
really is.
I'm the same thing with my eating. So I generally eat the same thing most days and the same amount, and then just through a feedback process, figure out if I need to make adjustments.
Yeah, I do tend to struggle with my sleeping routine, especially because, well, still, I just transitioned into my early 30s, and my weekend lifestyle is very different than my weekday lifestyle. I would be out clubbing, partying, as a lot of people my age used to do, still do. And I've just found that, if I want to just have like a normal routine, I can't do that anymore, which is uh, sad for me. But I guess that's just part of growing up. Uh,
Yeah, it was funny in Austin when I was around your age. Um, this I met a group of friends that like to go out all the time, clubbing and stuff, including some attractive women. And I remember distinctly one time they called me at 10 o'clock, and I had just started getting ready for bed, and they wanted to go out clubbing, and I was just like, "Sorry, I'm going to bed. It's my bedtime." Like I'd really love to, but I can't.
yeah, as a single man, having that routine is not best for your dating life. Though I will argue that going to clubs and meeting people there is not essentially the best way to go around your dating life too.
Yeah, you can't hear anything in clubs.
Yeah, and
And,
everyone's
and
drunk.
lunch dates and coffee dates are much less pressure, I feel. And dinner
True.
is always a lot more expensive. You got to figure out how do they feel about you paying, or how much you're going to spend. Are you going to drink? All of those questions just aren't there if you go for lunch or coffee.
Absolutely. So for someone trying to get into a good sleep routine, um, what would be your most important things that they should be doing?
Go to bed at the same time every day.
Mm,
Yeah. And then set your alarm to wake up at the after 8 hours.
8 hours.
So just backwards plan. Yeah. Whatever you need to do to make sure that you start your day calmly and focused, and then make sure you're getting 8 hours. If there are some people that do okay on 7 hours, the research says it's very extreme outliers that do okay on anything less than that. Um, there, I think there's research saying some people do better with different 8 hours. So by analogy, they were saying some people are morning owls, some people are, no, wait, they were lions. I think they called them lions. So the early risers. Then you've got bears, who are the mid risers, and wolves that are kind of like the stereotypical teenager that sleeps in late every day. So some people genuinely do better, like sleeping midnight to 8 instead of 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm. I it's a lot to do with your circadian rhythms too. That being said,
Well, it makes sense from a evolutionary standpoint too. That and then I forgot there are dolphins apparently, people who just never um, take more like naps throughout the night, and so they're very light sleepers.
mm-hmm,
And it makes sense evolutionary because that way the tribe that was trying to protect against wild animals, someone would always be awake, keeping watch.
true. I think I have a friend who's like that, who has a hard time sleeping peacefully at night. Whereas me, I'm a deep sleeper. Once I go to sleep, it's hard for me to wake up. I don't know what you call that, but that's whatever it
It's good
is.
sleep.
It is good sleep. And uh, I can't function off bad sleep anyways. I need good 8 hours of sleep. Oh,
Yeah, if I don't sleep well, it starts to give me trouble with the PTSD. So it's
mm,
just a non-negotiable for me.
same.
And then there's like
And
your basic sleep hygiene, like make sure your room is as dark as possible, um, as close to 65 degrees as you can handle, um, stuff
yeah,
like
I've
that.
observed that too. Oh, I think 67 is my personal favorite right now. I haven't reduced it lower than that because I'm scared if I would be able to handle it. I don't want to like wake up and use the restroom in the middle of the night. But if you're working a 9 to 5 and your work starts at 8 or 9, uh, you are forced, wherever you may be, you're forced to schedule your sleep time around that. Um, and I find it hard to wake up at 7 and immediately get to work too. I need some uh, time to just become present to the morning. So 2 hours before that, I would say. Uh, so yeah, I guess 9 to 5 or 10 to 6 is a good time for me. Um, I do terribly at that right now. I sleep at 12, wake up at 8 on a good day, and on a bad day, can get from 2 to 8 or 9, and that's just terrible. I
Yeah, I think
can't
I
function.
saw research saying our deepest sleep is usually between midnight and 2,
Mm, okay,
maybe 2 to 4, somewhere in there.
but that also depends upon when you go to sleep, right?
I don't think it does.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So pretty
Um,
much everyone should be asleep if possible between midnight and 4.
hmm. Yeah, it's hard on the weekend,
Yeah.
Just, it's a change I'll have to make. I know. Just,
Well, there's trade-offs.
there
Social
is.
life can be more important at some ages.
Yes and no. I guess when you're in college, it's fine. Once you get your professional life, um, there are other ways to socialize too, and I guess just the nightclub scene or the bar scene, since I've stopped drinking, is not for me anymore. I used to
Yeah.
drink alcohol, and that used to make it bearable. But if you don't drink, it's not bearable to be around people who just drunk out of their minds doing stupid things, just to escape, and you're just there sober. Um,
Yeah.
Sobriety is another topic which I'm really interested in these days. I've been trying to be sober for as long as I can be, and find it increasingly difficult, trying to get that escape that you get from alcohol. But I've been trying to battle it, and let's see how long I make it. Uh, so you mentioned journaling and meditation. How
Mhm.
long have you been doing those things?
Oh, meditation I've been doing most of my adult life, I guess. Yeah, I used to be religious and So I would pray, and I think that has some similar benefits. But yeah, I think right before I joined the army, I started this meditation program that was structured brainwave stuff, and that was an hour a day. I did that with the only break being when I was in basic training, where they took our electronics away from us, and I did that consistently for 10 years. And now I'm usually more like 20 minutes a day.
And journaling?
Journaling, I used to write in a hand journal, so I've got like I think 6 books of handwritten journaling. And then my mom read my journal, so I started journaling on my computer.
Mm, I hate when
Um,
that happens, No one
yeah,
should read your journal. That's just.
she claimed I left it out for her, and I'm like, no, I did not.
I'm sure if my mom could, she'd read my journal too. And I'm sure my mom's never going to be listening to my podcast, so I can say that right now. Uh,
Well, everyone's got a mom, so they get it.
right, right. Uh,
Now I probably don't. I try to journal weekly as like a weekly recap and summary and kind of defrag my brain a little bit. But I do note making now probably more than journaling, and I think it serves a similar purpose to kind of make me focus my thoughts and document them and connect them to other things I've thought before.
how does it help you? Both of these things.
Well, in making the notes, they're linked. So I write down either like if I make a book summary, I read a book, I make notes in the book, or I highlight, and then I'll go back after I finish and pull out the highlights, summarize them in my own words. Um, if they're scientific, I'll put them in my citation software, and then the book summary itself is linked to other topics. So there are things that are specific, like either articles that I've written or worked on. I wrote an academic book chapter that way. So I've got the topics and I'll link them to the output. So there's kind of an input process output system of I think they call it personal knowledge management. So it's like having your own Wikipedia.
So, are there notes about one specific topic or just everything that you read about?
Yes,
Everything that you read about.
both.
Okay.
I mean, there are
Both.
specific topics that I've linked to all the other external notes. If there's a book summary that talks about that topic, it's mentioned and linked there too.
What topic would you say that you have gained an expertise in through this system of yours?
I've really documented a lot of my nutritional information.
Mm.
I've been reading peer-reviewed research on nutrition probably several years, and not peer-reviewed information for more than 20 years. Oh.
Cool. That's a good segue to your nutrition. So, I was talking to a friend recently, and he, because of some topic we were talking about, he got into this whole thing about, hey man, what do you think about the carnivore diet? And I was like, you know what? I think I have friend coming to my podcast soon, and I'm definitely gonna ask him because I know that he is an expert on that. So why don't you tell all the listeners and the viewers about your diet? What do you eat every day, and why do you eat that?
Well, I've done many different types of diets over the years. Like I first read about the Zone diet and the Atkins diet back in the late 90s, and I kind of tried both. I felt the best I'd ever felt in my life when I was consistent on the Zone diet, which is just a diet that they say you should eat this ratio of macros primarily. I think it's evolved since then, but it was the first time I was actually measuring things out and tracking macros and not calories, but macros really. So having a certain ratio of protein to carbohydrate with fat and from certain sources. Since then, I've read dozens of nutrition books, a lot of things on vitamins and nutrients and timing. I think there's a lot of one thing I'm still trying to resolve currently is the big debate, I think, in the nutrition space is whether the role of carbohydrates in the diet. So the dominant nutrition science point of view is that energy balance is the bottom line. And then I guess the diet doctors or people who promote various diets, I mean, starting more than 200 years back, evidently, from what I've read, is that the restriction of carbohydrates will help you lose weight. And I think they're both right, which is strange because they tend to strawman each other. And I just hearing a lot of the low carb advocates try to make fun of the calories in, calories out, as they phrase it. I've never heard someone in nutrition science say that's exactly how it works. So, so what I'm doing is I've cycled through paleo. I was dating a vegan, and we had a bet. Well, it wasn't a bet. She said she was going to dump me if I didn't go vegan. So my counter to her was, well, why don't we both research our ways of eating and see which one's healthier? And so from that, I actually ended up eating more meat. And I didn't go vegan, and we continued dating for a little while longer, even though we probably shouldn't have. And then paleo kind of came around. That's the idea that we should be eating what our ancestors ate, and we assume that they ate meat and plants. And so one factor that almost every way of eating has is to exclude processed food and minimize sugar. Now, I think the nutritional science and dietitians don't do themselves a service when they say you can eat as much sugar as you want as long as you're balancing your energy. Because I think just the experience of diabetes in every country of the world shows us that otherwise is true. And so if we want to avoid the disease of too much sugar, we should limit sugar. And I probably shouldn't say that they say you can have an unlimited amount of sugar, but they're definitely going to say some is fine, where your low carb advocates are going to say none is fine. So just following those threads, pulling along the way. I was doing low carb and keto. I was doing lots and lots of intermittent fasting. All through my dissertation, I was eating one meal a day at times, which I found challenging over time because trying to get the number of calories you need into one meal is difficult. And if you eat it later in the afternoon, then you may have a hard time going to sleep after that. So eventually I also heard about the carnivore diet, so I started looking at some of its claims. I think a lot of it is still controversial. I was actually even just reading today about lectins, which are a protein found in plants, and especially like legumes, beans. And then the nutritional science people say, oh, some are fine, but as long as you're cooking the beans, you're not going to get too many of those things. And then I have to ask myself, well, if one, you got to compare the costs and benefits. The potential benefits that I see listed from those sources are getting some vitamins, getting some nutrients, getting some fiber is what they list. But when you can get all those things without consuming that food, why would you? Because there are risks. Like ricin, the biological agent that kills people, that's also a lectin. So that's the category that those things are in. And yes, they can say it's the dose that makes the poison, and that's fine. But why take any poison at all? I mean, just because your body can handle lectins and cyanide and oxalates and um, gluten, I mean, why test your body? There was one book that advocates a lectin-free diet, and its basic argument is, yes, plants are bad for you, but you should eat them anyways because they're good for you because they're bad for you. And it's kind of a circular argument, but I haven't heard a better one. When they talk about the arguments for fiber, the arguments in favor of fiber are that when they do large-scale epidemiological studies asking people what they ate, most of the people that live the longest also eat fiber. That's it. There's no further evidence to suggest that fiber is good for you. When you go and look at the actual randomized controlled trials, where you compare eating fiber versus not eating fiber, the less fiber you eat, the better the outcome. So almost every digestive problem we have is made better without fiber. If you're going to have some sort of digestive surgery, they tell you don't eat fiber because you don't need all that in your gut while you're under the knife, so to say. So just looking through and saying, yes, plants do have some vitamins. They're usually not the kind that are as bioavailable as animals. And when we look at the long-term evidence and think about kind of first principles, when you think about energy density, which is the point of eating, to get energy, plants aren't dense enough energy sources to allow a human being to thrive. When we look at our biology is set up as a carnivore, not as an herbivore. Everything from the length of our gut to the stomach acid. I've heard some people make the argument that because we don't have teeth and fangs, that we might not be carnivores. But what we find is the human brain evolved at the same time as our tool making capacity. So humans have not existed as Homo sapiens without tools in their hands. So whether it was a spear, a knife, or those little pointy rocks that they use to break open bones to get the marrow and get the brains out, we can't establish causation, but we know that our brains grew proportionally to the amount of meat we were eating. So eating meat and using tools is what makes us human. It's what made us human. And it's difficult to see a scenario in which not continuing that is going to help us to thrive.
So, do you want to talk a little bit more about what you eat every
specifics.
day?
So
Yeah.
I just eat meat and eggs, butter. I've been eating more dairy lately, but I think I'm going to cut that out because that was just due to traveling and needing something you can quickly pop in your mouth. I actually so I'm going on 2 years that I've been on carnivore, and I had a 6-month bout after the first year where I tried to add fruit back in and found it didn't really work for me. I think there's a lot of research left to be done regarding fructose and the effect it has on the body and how it affects uric acid. A lot of that research is just kind of being compiled this year. I read 2 different peer-reviewed books with lots of citations, I should say, on uric acid. And it seems like it may be kind of the missing link where everyone's been blaming insulin, but insulin's actually a byproduct of your uric acid levels. So specifically for breakfast, I'll have bone broth and eggs. Lunch. Oh, so what I was gonna say, yeah, I did carnivore for a year. 6 months, I added fruit, and when I found out the fruit had too much fiber for me, I switched it back out with rice. So I had a very low amount of carbohydrates, but white rice doesn't have much fiber in it. And then I realized after giving it a good 6-month trial that I didn't feel as good as I had before. So I just took all the carbs back out. The only carbs I've been having are the dairy, which I'm actually stopping today. And there are trace amounts of carbohydrate in muscle, meat muscle, because of the glycogen in the muscle. So I'd gone back and forth. Part of the reasoning was there's a well-known carnivore advocate that's saying that it should be animal-based with carbs, with fruit. But then when you look at him, he surfs like 4 hours a day, so his activity level and getting full sun and everything else really is not can't be extrapolated to the general population. So during that first year, I needed to lose some weight. I'd let my weight kind of creep up slowly over the years, and I was up to a high of 195 pounds on a 5'8" frame, which is not. I mean, it's not obese, but I think it's like tipping into the overweight category just a little bit, the BMI. And so everyone says that if you go low carb, then you'll lose weight. Well, I'd already been low carb, and my weight was up, so there was no more lower carb to go. I mean, I was eating vegetables, but um, that's not really enough to keep the weight on. I found that a combination of going carnivore and then calorie restricting, it was much easier. A couple of years before that, I'd done a traditional bodybuilding um, cutting phase, which is a low fat, high carb, high protein diet. So basically, take as much fat out as you can. And I did lose weight that way, but I felt terrible. I was on the toilet like 4 or 5 times a day. I even tried eating more fiber to see if it would help, and it didn't. Um, yeah, constant gas, bloating, and constantly feeling hungry. One of the things about uric acid levels is it puts our cells into an energy deficit. It kind of interrupts the Krebs cycle somehow. I've got it all in my notes. I'd have to look at how to explain it better, but it puts us into this foraging behavior, it's called. And that's what we see with most people is they're constantly looking for the next snack or the next meal. And that's because of the fructose that's in our system, making our body feel like it's starving. So one of the books was called Nature Wants Us to Be Fat. And so when you look at it from that type of point of view, from an evolutionary point of view, it makes perfect sense because throughout most of our human history, tomorrow's meal was not guaranteed. So for human beings to survive when in between hunts, it carried over that ability we had back when we were herbivores hanging in the trees, that when you eat fructose, then it's a signal to the uric acid, which cascades into everything else and basically tells you to store as much fat as you can. So if we're eating fruit, we're telling our body to store fat by that theory. Obviously, if we're in severe calorie restriction, it's hard to add fat, but I've seen enough from individuals who struggled with their weight to feel like that's a mechanism that's worth exploring. And so I did calorie restriction on 100% carnivore diet, ended up losing a total of about 40 pounds. And I'm just about 10 pounds above that now. The last 2 weeks I was traveling a lot and overeating quite a bit. So I added 1.5 inches to my waist, and I'm going to take that back off now. So my lunch and dinner is usually a similar thing. Right now, I found that it's most cost effective to get whatever meat is on sale at the store, usually a chuck roast. And if it's really on sale, I'll get as many as I can, stick them in the freezer, thaw them out, cut them up into stir fry, cook them in butter, and I am a happy camper. When I first started, I thought, let me give this a week because I'm going to get tired of eating steak every day. But I didn't. I was really surprised at that. So it's like every meal is like my favorite thing in the world to eat. And I don't have to just do it on special occasions. I can eat steak or I can eat chuck roast, thin sliced. And I love it. Besides that, I've kind of set up my restrictions so that I can just pick any meat and I'll know how much of it I need to eat to meet my intake target. So I generally don't eat a lot of lean meat because the fat's really important for feeling like I'm eating. I found I've had issues if I try to eat too much chicken or ham, because those are both really lean. And then also ham is cured in brown sugar. So I end up getting sugar, and that kind of messes with my equilibrium if I eat very much of it.
So, what would you tell someone comes up to you and says, "My doctor told me to not eat red meat as much because it's gonna increase my cholesterol."
Yeah. So so many things. Um, One, doctors are not trained in nutrition. They get like half a lecture on it or something like that. So every doctor that knows something about nutrition is because they've studied it on their own. Um, Two, doctors are actually not authorized to give you advice about nutrition. That's what dietitians are licensed to do. So if your doctor's telling you, he's only telling you in the most general terms that are um, part of the standard of care that they're allowed to say. So they're not allowed to tell you to eat a certain way to improve your medical condition, which is crazy. It seems like those things should be together, but they're not. Thirdly, we have the problem in nutrition science of a lot of our information coming from epidemiology, which is looking at large groups and basically averaging what they remember. So they're based on what people they have a standard interview where they say, "Did you eat this? How much of this do you normally eat?" And it's all based on memory, which people are terrible about remembering what they ate if they didn't write it down. But when we do that, we have so many confounding factors that are not controlled for. The biggest one being that people that generally eat meat tend to eat French fries and drink sodas and drink beer and eat pizza, like because we've been told a lot of our lives that meat's not good for you. So only people who are less concerned about what they're eating are going to be eating more meat, at least in Western culture. I think there are some other cultures, like apparently Hong Kong is the longest lived. And when they plot the amount of meat the population eats versus the average age of the population, there's a linear relationship with the more meat you eat, the longer your population lives. So when red meat's been found in epidemiological studies to shorten life or cause colon cancer or anything like that, it's because of that healthy subject bias. So that's where we also get the idea that fiber is good for you, because we've been told that fiber is good for us. So people who are better about taking care of their health and are more likely to live longer anyway are also eating fiber. So the same people are probably not smoking, they're not drinking as much, they're exercising, they're sleeping enough. So that's what we call the healthy user bias. And I've seen some folks make fun of it, but I've not heard anyone have an actual refutation of it. As far as cholesterol goes, most doctors are not aware, apparently, that there are different kinds of cholesterol. And I don't just mean LDL and HDL, but within LDL, there was a study back in the 80s that showed that there are two different phenotypes of LDL. So there's basically fluffy LDL, which is great for you, and then sticky, smaller LDL that's bad for you. You also have to understand that cholesterol is not the cause of cholesterol in your arteries. I think we have enough information to say that it's associated with that, but it's not the cause of it. Because if it were the cause of it, we would also have cholesterol in our veins, not just our arteries. So cholesterol not being the cause, it's there to patch up the inflammation that's there in the arteries. And it tends to happen both in the environment where there's inflammation, but also in the environment where you've got those sticky particles. So because your doctor's unlikely to prescribe you a full spectrum lipid panel, you can get a proxy of the phenotype you have just looking at the ratio of your HDL and your triglycerides. So I noticed on the charts that around the number 64 seems to be kind of the magic crossover point. So if you're looking at your lipid panels, you want your HDL to be above 64 and you want your triglycerides to be below 64. Your total cholesterol is completely irrelevant. And they've found no association when they look at that, except for the people with the lowest cholesterol have the highest mortality rate. So you need cholesterol, and meat is not causing bad cholesterol. It actually, if you are looking at the right factors, you'll see an improvement in your cholesterol. I certainly did when I had the confounding factor of losing weight at the same time, but everything improved when I did that on a carnivore diet.
Cool. So is there some resource if people want to get more educated about this subject that you recommend, or maybe a collection of your notes that they can find out there?
Um, I, I've been toying with the idea of creating a graphic novel with some of this nutritional information in it, but until that appears, there are a few books about it. I think when you just have to start looking at things critically. So I think especially during the pandemic, figuring out if something is peer reviewed or digging into a peer reviewed article, seeing if the title matches the abstract, if the conclusions justify the title. I mean, there's so many places where you can get the wrong information or get the wrong idea. So if an article doesn't have citations, I don't even bother with it anymore because there's so much circular logic and people just repeating things they've heard from other places. I think probably your best resource by far is Google Scholar. So just type in a topic you're interested in and look and see what research has been done on it. There are a few popular books out there, Carnivore Diet and Carnivore Code, and but I would encourage if you go to one of those sources that if something sounds like it might not be right, check their sources, check their citations. One big kind of disagreement I have with most of the carnivore community is that I think that we benefit from taking vitamins. Most of the carnivore community is of the opinion that you shouldn't have to take vitamins on a healthy diet, and therefore that's more evidence that the carnivore diet is a better way of eating because you can get all the vitamins you need from it. I think we have enough research to say that you cannot get enough vitamin C from any diet. We have a lot of evidence that you cannot get enough vitamin B3, niacin, from any diet. You cannot get enough vitamin D from any diet. That's from sunlight mostly. And many people don't live in a latitude that they can get enough sunlight. So if you're living in like the Boston or even Chicago area, if you are not nearly albino in your skin pigmentation, you cannot get enough sun no matter how much time you spend outside.
Cool.
So I think with supplementation, you can cover all those things regardless of whatever you're eating.
Cool. Talking to you right now, I observed that your marker for your physical fitness, uh, and based just on the conversation, has been how much you weigh. And I would be a little critical of using just that as your uh, marker for, oh, if I'm like in a good shape or not. Because uh, in my experience, there have been times where I weigh a lot, but my pants fit me really well, uh, just because maybe I've gained a lot of muscle probably. So I hope you do consider that aspect because you do work out 6 days a week, and
Yeah.
there might be times where you are gaining weight, and that's not a bad weight gain per
Yeah.
se.
No, I don't go by weight. I do
Okay.
weigh myself daily, but I use a 7-day moving average for my weekly taping. So I check my body fat percent. That's more what I go about in terms of my energy balance. So that there are two important factors. There's your energy balance that leads to your body composition, but then there's also your metabolic health. So I think that on a carnivore diet, you're going to meet your metabolic needs without any problem, and probably the best that you can with any diet. But that's not going to necessarily cover your body composition. because I actually put on fat when I initially started the carnivore diet. So that's where your energy balance comes into play. So if you're not ruining your metabolic status, um, and you want to work on your body composition, then those are two complementary but not entirely overlapping issues. They have a term called metabolically healthy obese. I think it is. So when they figure out the population that has diabetes, the population that's obese, it's not 100% overlap. So there are people that are obese that do not have diabetes, and there are diabetic people who are not obese. And that varies quite a bit from country to country. So a lot of countries where they don't have maybe as much energy density in their food supply, like especially a vegetarian country like India or Sri Lanka or Pakistan, they're still seeing diabetes rates go through the roof because they have a lot of processed food and a lot of sugar and put sugar in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Uh,
understand it's not just weight.
yeah, I mean, I'm just making sure that, we're on the same page there, because I have essentially stopped weighing myself at this point, and I just go by uh my pictures. That's sort of seen as the best way to compare myself. I take pictures over time, and then I compare myself and see if it's working out for me or not. Because yeah, that's what I've seen as like the best way to go about it. Uh, Also, your workouts. What kind of workouts do you do?
Yeah, to put a bow on that last thought, I think the amount of results you get are going to be based on how much tracking you do. So I think well, and you'll see this in the carnivore communities if you look at the groups on Facebook or wherever people are talking about it, they'll claim that they lost all their weight with no tracking whatsoever. And I think that's entirely possible if you just stop eating processed food. But if you have to pick one thing to look at, then I think how your pants fit is probably the best thing, like
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about. Otherwise, you can just use a clothing tape measure and see what your waist is week to week. But yeah, I do a tape measure and then use an online calculator for my body fat percentage. I know it's not 100% accurate, but it gives me a baseline to see how I'm doing over time. Um, Sorry, what was the next question? You,
Oh yeah, my question was 6 days a week. What kind of workouts do you
yeah,
do? I assume they won't be as heavy because 6 days a week of heavy workout, it's just gonna be bad for your muscles, right?
it could be. Yeah, I've usually cycled between two main modalities. One of them being TAC Fit, which is tactical fitness. It's often a Tabata uh, workout protocol, which is a 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off for 8 sets. They also work through 6 degrees of motion, and they promote themselves as a health first approach. So there's a 4-day wave where you start with no intensity, go to low, medium, and then high, and that's always worked pretty well. That's really good for metabolic conditioning, and I've used kettlebells and club bells that way. Then for strength and endurance, I've been using resistance bands, and that's one that you can do 6 days a week as long as you're alternating your workouts. So like the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'll do like chest and shoulders and related muscles, and then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, I'll do back and legs kind of thing. So I think 36 hours is where they start to see um, muscle synthesis taper off, so that you can work out within 48 hours again, the same muscles.
Mm-hmm.
I do read a bit, and on that, there's one trainer that has done peer reviewed research and teaches on peer reviewed research, and I I want to say there's still some debate about whether a single set to failure or up to 45 sets a week per muscle group is optimal. So I think you can get results either way, and I've done up to 30 sets a week, and I was certainly gaining muscle doing that, but I found it too time consuming. I mean, it would mean working out 2 hours every day. And
Yeah, it is.
yeah.
My workouts go on for 2 hours. That's why I can't fit like 6 workouts a week. It's more like 3 to 4. Um, and also what I read was that most professional athletes they do 3 to 4 workouts a week to get the best return of investment. And I do know that of course there's a there's an output for them where they have to go for game time and perform, so they can't put everything in to
Yeah.
their workouts anyways. Um, but yeah, that's why I've just been sticking to like 3 to 4.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably like diet, the best one for an individual is the one they'll stick to.
Mm-hmm. And I do play basketball, but that's just my cardio because I don't like running on the treadmill. I hate it. It's the worst. Or any form of other cardio except sports.
Yeah. No, I hear you. In the Army, I was in an airborne unit and we had to run 7 miles 3 times a week. So, and that usually looking at the back of someone's head.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, my dad was a runner, and I think it takes more mental strength than physical strength to do that. Running
mhm.
7 miles. Um, cool. I guess so. That's it for our time today, Lewis. Thank you for going over everything with me today. Appreciate you giving your time and coming on my podcast. For people who want to get in touch with you, what is the best way to reach out to you?
Probably LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm not all over the place social media. I don't feel like it really benefits me, and I don't have a product I'm trying to push right now. So not
That's okay.
very active on social media. But if you find me on LinkedIn, I will see if you send me a message.
What there, how should they find you on LinkedIn? Can you state out your complete name for them so that they can go
Yeah, it's
there?
Louis Louis, Burns Burns.
All
And
right.
it's got PhD behind it.
Louis Burns, PhD. Thank you for
Yes.
joining us today, man. It was
Yeah.
nice talking to you again.
Yeah. I enjoyed it.